When I first came across Stoicism, I wasn't just looking for peace of mind, I was looking for something deeper. I wanted to command respect effortlessly, without having to prove myself or put on a show. That kind of respect that people feel the moment you walk into a room, just by the way you carry yourself. What I found in Stoicism wasn't a set of tricks, but life-changing habits that transformed not just how I see myself, but how others see me. These Stoic habits won't just make you calmer or more focused, they'll make people respect you instantly. Why? Because true respect comes from mastering your emotions, staying unshaken under pressure, and living by unbreakable principles. The ancient Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, didn't chase admiration. They earned it through strength, wisdom, and discipline. In this video, I'm going to reveal 7 Stoic habits that will make people take notice, without you having to say a word. Practice these habits, and you won't just change your own life, you'll change how the world sees you. Let's dive in. 1. Master your emotions. Mastering my emotions has been one of the most transformative Stoic habits I've adopted. At the core of Stoicism is the idea that while we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we react to it. For a long time, I let anger, frustration, and fear dictate my actions. When things went wrong, I'd react impulsively, whether it was lashing out, feeling anxious, or letting frustration build up inside me. But once I started practicing emotional mastery, everything changed. Stoicism taught me that real strength comes from being able to stay calm, even when things are spiraling out of control. This kind of composure doesn't just make you feel more in control, it earns you the respect of those around you. People instinctively respect someone who can keep their cool under pressure. I realized that every time I let my emotions take over, I was giving away my power. But when I started to consciously choose how to react, I felt more grounded and in control of my life. Take, for example, how I handle anger now. There was a time when if someone upset me, I'd react instantly, often regretting it later. Now, I pause. I've trained myself to recognize the initial wave of emotion, let it pass, and then respond in a way that aligns with my values. Instead of being a slave to my emotions, I've learned to be their master. This kind of emotional mastery is something I've seen in figures like Don Draper. His ability to stay calm and collected, even in the most high-stress situations, was something I admired. Whether he was dealing with a tough client or a personal crisis, Don rarely let his emotions show. He wasn't cold or detached, he was simply in control. And this control gave him a kind of quiet power that others couldn't help but respect. I wanted that for myself, so I began working on my own emotional discipline. But mastering emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. It's not about pretending I don't feel anything when I'm hurt or angry. Instead, it's about acknowledging those emotions, understanding where they come from, and then choosing how I act on them. By learning to separate my feelings from my actions, I've become more mindful, more deliberate in how I respond to situations. There's a strength in not reacting impulsively. It gives me time to think, to make decisions based on reason rather than emotion. In the past, I'd get worked up over small things, traffic, a rude comment, a missed opportunity. But now, I approach these situations differently. I ask myself, is this worth my energy? Is this something I can control? Most of the time, the answer is no. And once I've let go of the need to react to everything, I've found a sense of calm that's hard to shake. This shift in mindset hasn't just made me feel better internally, it's changed how others see me. When you don't react emotionally, people notice. They respect the fact that you don't let situations or other people control you. It's a quiet kind of power, but it's incredibly effective. Emotional mastery isn't just about staying calm, it's about earning respect without saying a word. 2. Commanding body language. Mastering my body language has been just as important as mastering my emotions. What I learned from Stoicism and from observing people like Don Draper is that how you carry yourself sends a powerful message long before you ever open your mouth. People notice how you walk into a room, how you sit, and how you interact with your environment. Your posture and physical presence are direct signals of how you see yourself and how you expect others to treat you. Before I understood the importance of body language, I often found myself slouching or fidgeting without realizing it. I'd walk into meetings or social situations feeling tense, and that tension showed. I didn't project the confidence I wanted, and as a result, people didn't take me as seriously. But once I started paying attention to my posture, standing taller, sitting with more intention, and moving with a sense of purpose, it changed how people responded to me. Stoics placed great emphasis on dignity and composure, and commanding body language is a reflection of that. It's not about dominating a space, but about carrying yourself with quiet confidence. Don Draper, for instance, had this relaxed yet commanding presence that drew people in. He didn't need to be the loudest person in the room, nor did he need to make grand gestures to assert his authority. He could sit comfortably, almost asymmetrically, and still control the room. That kind of confidence is magnetic. When I first started practicing this, I began by making small adjustments. I'd make sure my feet were planted firmly on the ground when standing, keeping my shoulders back and my head held high. Instead of crossing my arms or fidgeting, I let my hands rest naturally, signaling openness and confidence. Even sitting, I learned to avoid slumping or folding into myself. Instead, I'd sit with my legs uncrossed, back straight, and arms relaxed, taking up space in a way that showed I was comfortable and in control. One of the most significant changes I noticed was the way I entered a room. Before, I'd walk in quickly, almost trying to make myself smaller. Now, I take my time. I move with purpose, making sure I'm fully present in the space. This might seem like a subtle shift, but it has a huge impact on how others perceive you. When you walk with confidence, when you sit as though you belong in the space, people start to treat you differently. They pay attention. Another key element is eye contact. I used to avoid it, not realizing that this simple action could communicate so much. But now, when I speak, I hold eye contact with the person I'm talking to, especially when I'm making an important point. I've learned from figures like Draper that it's not about staring someone down, but about being present and making the other person feel seen. Body language, in essence, is about signaling confidence and self-respect. When you carry yourself in a way that says you're in control, others naturally respond to that energy. Stoicism teaches us to find calm and control within, and commanding body language is an outward reflection of that inner discipline. I found that as I became more aware of how I moved and held myself, not only did I feel more confident, but people started to treat me with more respect, without me having to say a word. 3. Non-reactivity. One of the most powerful lessons I've learned from Stoicism is the ability to stay non-reactive. In a world where everyone seems to be quick to anger, frustration, or offense, mastering non-reactivity can set you apart instantly. It's a skill that not only communicates self-control, but also commands respect. People instinctively gravitate towards those who aren't rattled by chaos, who can keep their composure when everything else is falling apart. This is something I've come to embrace deeply, and it's been a game changer. I used to be the type of person who reacted immediately to provocations or challenges. If someone pushed my buttons, I'd snap back without thinking. But what I didn't realize was that, in those moments, I was giving up control. My emotions were driving the situation, not me. The Stoics, especially people like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, emphasized the importance of governing your own mind, not letting external events or other people's behavior dictate your responses. Once I began practicing this, I noticed a dramatic shift in how people interacted with me. Non-reactivity doesn't mean passivity or avoiding confrontation. It means responding thoughtfully rather than impulsively. For example, when faced with criticism or a personal attack, instead of letting my emotions flare up and responding immediately, I've learned to take a step back and assess the situation calmly. What I've realized is that often people are expecting a reaction, whether it's anger, defensiveness, or frustration. By not giving them that reaction, you throw them off balance. It puts you in control of the situation. Don Draper exemplifies this type of composure. Watching him in high-pressure moments, you see how he often pauses before responding. Whether someone is challenging his authority or pushing his patience, he doesn't react out of anger or frustration. Instead, he takes a moment, considers his next move, and responds in a way that serves him. This ability to pause, to take your time before reacting, is something I've consciously adopted. It not only makes you appear more confident, but it also gives you the upper hand. In the past, I found myself easily rattled by unexpected challenges or confrontations. If a deal was going south or someone questioned my ideas, I'd feel the immediate need to defend myself. But through the practice of Stoicism, I've learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing, at least not right away. When you don't react impulsively, it shows that you are in control of your emotions and the situation. And that's where true power lies. Another aspect of non-reactivity is staying grounded in your principles, even when others are trying to provoke you. There will always be people who test your limits, whether it's in the workplace, in personal relationships, or in social settings. I used to let these situations get under my skin, feeling the need to prove myself or push back. But now, I remind myself that staying calm and composed sends a much stronger message. It tells others that I'm not easily manipulated or thrown off course. I'm operating on my terms, not theirs. Non-reactivity, at its core, is about mastery over oneself. It's about recognizing that no one else controls how you feel or how you respond. Only you do. When you internalize this, it not only brings you peace of mind, but it also shifts how people view you. They see someone who doesn't buckle under pressure, who doesn't let petty provocations sway them. They see someone who is in control, and that's the type of person people respect. Since adopting this Stoic habit, I've noticed that people are much more cautious about how they approach me. They know I won't be baited into emotional outbursts or rash decisions. I've become the calm in the storm, and in many ways, that's more powerful than anything I could say or do. It's a silent form of strength, and it has transformed how I navigate challenges both big and small. 4. Control your eye contact. One of the most underrated yet powerful tools in Stoicism and in life is the mastery of eye contact. It's such a subtle form of communication, but the way you use it can shape how others perceive you. In my journey of applying Stoic principles, controlling my eye contact has become a game changer when it comes to commanding respect and attention in any room I walk into. Early on, I never really thought much about my eye contact. I would either avoid it when I felt unsure or overcompensate by locking eyes too intensely, which made people uncomfortable. But Stoicism teaches balance in everything, and that includes how you engage with others through something as simple as where you direct your gaze. What I've learned from observing figures like Don Draper and reflecting on Stoic teachings is that eye contact is all about intentionality. It's about knowing when to hold it, when to break it, and when to intensify it. Don Draper's use of eye contact is brilliant. At the start of a conversation, he's often aloof, almost disinterested, which makes people work harder to gain his attention. It's a psychological trick that flips the dynamic. People are drawn in because they want to earn his gaze. And when he finally does give it to them, when his eyes lock in, it's like an arrow hitting its mark. It shows that he's fully engaged and that the moment is important. I started adopting this approach in my own interactions, and the difference has been profound. Instead of giving away my attention freely, I've learned to be more selective. At the beginning of a conversation, I might hold back a bit, giving minimal eye contact to create a sense of distance. This does something interesting. It makes people feel like they have to earn my full attention. And then, when I do lock eyes with them, whether it's during a critical point or when I'm making a decision, it feels powerful. That moment of direct, piercing eye contact signals that I'm in control, that I'm fully present, and that what I'm about to say carries weight. But it's not just about using eye contact sparingly to keep people on edge. It's about understanding the rhythm of human interaction. The Stoics believed in being intentional with how we engage with the world, and eye contact is no different. Too much eye contact can come off as aggressive or overwhelming, while too little can make you seem unsure or disengaged. The key is to find the balance, to wield your gaze with purpose. During negotiations or important meetings, I've found that using this Stoic approach to eye contact shifts the power dynamic in subtle but impactful ways. When you control when and how you make eye contact, you can guide the flow of the conversation without having to raise your voice or assert yourself forcefully. It's a quiet, almost invisible form of influence. By holding eye contact when it matters most, like when making a key point or delivering important news, you show that you're not only confident, but also deeply focused and intentional. Another important aspect I've learned is knowing when to break eye contact. Holding it for too long can create unnecessary tension. By breaking it at just the right moment, you release that tension and give the other person space to process what's been said. This too commands respect. It shows that you are not desperate for their approval or validation. You're simply stating your truth and moving forward. In my personal relationships, I've also seen how mastering eye contact can strengthen connections. Stoicism emphasizes being fully present, and nothing communicates presence more than eye contact. When I'm having a serious conversation with someone I care about, I use this same principle, starting with a soft gaze and then locking in when the moment calls for it. It shows that I'm listening deeply, that I'm fully there in the moment, and that I respect what they're saying. What I love most about this Stoic habit is that it requires no words. Eye contact alone can speak volumes. It can communicate strength, focus, presence, and authority, all without a single word being spoken. And that, I've found, is where the real power lies. By mastering my eye contact, I've learned how to command a room, earn respect, and navigate difficult conversations with a quiet, unshakable confidence. 5. Speak less, say more. One of the most transformative lessons I've learned from Stoicism is the power of restraint, especially when it comes to speaking. There was a time when I felt the need to constantly explain myself, to fill every silence with words, thinking that the more I said, the more convincing I would be. But Stoicism teaches us the opposite. The more we speak, the more we risk diluting our message. Speaking less, but with precision and intention, can make what you say land with more impact. When I first came across this concept, I didn't immediately understand its value. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, silence can feel counterintuitive. But then I started to observe people like Don Draper, who embodied this principle in almost every conversation. He didn't rush to fill the silence, nor did he explain himself unnecessarily. When he spoke, every word was calculated, and because of that, people listened. He didn't speak to impress, he spoke to make an impact. I began practicing this in my own life, learning to hold back when my impulse was to jump into a conversation or over-explain myself. What I discovered was that silence is often more powerful than words. It creates space for others to think, to process, and most importantly, to pay attention. When you speak less, people begin to notice the times you do speak, and they start to value your input more. It's almost as if they know that when you do open your mouth, it's going to be important. This practice of restraint goes back to one of the core Stoic principles, wisdom in action. The Stoics believed that every action should be thoughtful and deliberate, and this includes speech. Why waste words when you can make a bigger impact with fewer? This philosophy has changed how I approach conversations, meetings, and even casual discussions. Instead of feeling the need to constantly contribute, I've learned to wait, observe, and choose my moments. When I do speak, I make sure my words count. There's also an incredible power in silence itself. In many situations, saying nothing can speak louder than any words. I've seen this play out in high-pressure situations, whether it's a tense negotiation or a heated argument. By staying silent and letting the other person fill the space, you not only gather more information about what's really going on, but you also gain control over the interaction. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, they often reveal more than they intended. This is something I've learned to leverage in both personal and professional settings. Another benefit of speaking less is that it forces you to listen more. Most of us are so focused on what we're going to say next that we don't truly hear what the other person is saying. But when you commit to saying less, you naturally become a better listener. You tune into the nuances of the conversation, pick up on what's left unsaid, and can respond more thoughtfully. This not only makes you more respected, but also more effective in your interactions. Over time, I've come to appreciate the weight that silence adds to your words. When you don't speak often, people hang on to your every word. It's almost as if they're waiting for you to drop some profound insight. And when you do, the impact is far greater than if you had been talking the entire time. The Stoics believed that wisdom comes not from speaking, but from understanding, and that's a lesson I've taken to heart. This habit of speaking less but saying more has also transformed how people see me. In the past, I would over-explain my thoughts or actions, seeking approval or validation. But Stoicism has taught me that I don't need to explain myself. When you speak with conviction and purpose, you don't need to fill the air with justifications. People respect confidence, and confidence often lies in your ability to let your actions speak for you rather than your words. The practice of speaking less isn't about being secretive or withholding. It's about being intentional. It's about realizing that your words carry weight, and when you choose to use them sparingly, they become more powerful. This is a habit that has changed the way I approach every interaction, whether it's with friends, colleagues, or strangers. By speaking less and saying more, I've found that I command more respect, more attention, and more influence in every situation. In a world that's constantly talking, the person who masters the art of silence stands out. It's a skill that not only reflects inner strength and self-control, but also creates a presence that others can't help but respect. 6. Be comfortable with walking away. One of the hardest lessons I've had to internalize in life is knowing when to walk away. For years, I would hold on to situations, relationships, or opportunities longer than I should have. Whether it was out of fear of missing out, a desire to win, or simply not wanting to admit defeat, I'd cling to things that weren't serving me. The problem is, this clinging often drained my energy, lowered my self-respect, and made me feel trapped. Stoicism, however, taught me a different approach, one that gave me a sense of freedom and power. The Stoics believed in detachment, not in a cold, uncaring way, but in the sense of knowing when something is no longer beneficial and having the strength to let it go. I began to understand this concept by observing people like Don Draper. One of the things that set him apart was his comfort with walking away, whether from a client, a deal, or a relationship. He never appeared desperate, even when the stakes were high. And that's the key. When you're willing to walk away, you signal to others that you don't need their approval, validation, or even their money to feel complete. You become someone who operates on your own terms, and that commands respect. I remember a situation where I was negotiating a business deal and things weren't going as planned. The other party kept shifting terms, making unreasonable demands, and generally acting as though they had all the leverage. My initial reaction was to concede, thinking I had to make the deal work at all costs. But then I recalled the Stoic principle of detachment. I asked myself, is this deal really worth compromising my values and peace of mind? The answer was no. So I walked away. And the funny thing is, as soon as I did, the dynamic shifted. The other party, sensing my newfound resolve, came back with a more reasonable offer. They realized that I wasn't desperate, and that made them respect my position even more. It was a powerful reminder that sometimes the willingness to walk away is more valuable than any deal you could make. This mindset of detachment isn't just for business. It applies to relationships, friendships, and even personal habits. The Stoics were masters of this. They taught that holding on to things, whether it's people, possessions, or ideas, often leads to suffering. When you're too attached, you give away your power. You become dependent on something outside of yourself for your happiness or sense of worth, and that makes you vulnerable. Walking away, however, is an act of reclaiming your power. It's saying, I don't need this to define me. I'm whole on my own. This doesn't mean being cold or indifferent. It means being clear about your values and priorities and refusing to compromise them just to keep something or someone in your life. When you can do this, you start to move through life with a sense of ease and confidence. You no longer cling to what's slipping away because you trust that what's meant for you will come naturally. Don Draper embodied this in how he handled clients. If a client wasn't a good fit or wasn't treating him with respect, he didn't hesitate to walk away. And because he was willing to do so, clients respected him more. They knew he wasn't going to bend over backward just to keep them, which ironically made them want to work with him even more. It's a paradox, but the more comfortable you are with letting go, the more people want to hold on to you. I've found that this principle applies to all areas of life. In relationships, it's easy to stay out of fear of being alone, but when you're willing to walk away from a relationship that doesn't serve you, you attract better connections. In career decisions, knowing when to leave a job or a project that's draining your energy opens up space for better opportunities. The key is learning to be comfortable with the uncertainty that walking away brings. It's not easy, but it's incredibly freeing. At its core, being comfortable with walking away is about valuing yourself. It's about having the self-respect to know when enough is enough and trusting that you'll be okay, no matter what. It's not about giving up. It's about letting go of what's not meant for you so that you can make room for what is. When you master this, you stop chasing things out of fear or desperation, and you start attracting respect, opportunities, and relationships that align with who you truly are. 7. Live with integrity, no matter the cost. Living with integrity is one of the most challenging yet rewarding habits I've had to cultivate. For a long time, I thought integrity was something you only needed to maintain when it was convenient. But life has a way of testing your character in the most difficult situations, and that's when your true sense of integrity either shines or crumbles. The Stoics believed that living by your principles, no matter the cost, was the foundation of self-respect. And it's that unwavering commitment to your values that makes others trust and respect you deeply. There's a scene in Mad Men where Don Draper lays his cards on the table, confessing to his failures and moral failings in a way that strips him of his polished veneer. It was raw, it was uncomfortable, and it showed the cracks in the persona he'd built for himself. But that vulnerability, that willingness to live in truth, no matter how painful, was a defining moment of integrity. For me, watching that scene made me realize that true respect doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from owning your imperfections and being transparent about who you really are. In my own life, I've had moments where standing by my principles cost me, whether it was a career opportunity, a friendship, or a momentary sense of comfort. One situation that stands out is when I had the chance to take a lucrative deal that deep down didn't align with my values. It would have brought financial gain, but I knew I'd have to cut corners, manipulate people, and compromise on things that I believed in. For a while, I was tempted. The numbers looked great, and no one else seemed to be worried about ethics. But something in me couldn't do it. I walked away from that deal, and in the short term, it felt like a loss. I questioned myself, wondering if I'd made a foolish decision. But looking back, that choice was pivotal. Not only did I maintain my self-respect, but people noticed. They saw that I wasn't willing to sacrifice my integrity for a quick win, and over time, that built a reputation of trust. Integrity isn't about taking the easy road. It's about taking the right one, even when it costs you something. And in the long run, that earns you the respect and trust that can't be bought or faked. The Stoics emphasized that you can't control what others think of you, but you can control how you live. And by living with integrity, you create a foundation of respect that doesn't waver, even when others might not agree with your choices. For years, I thought living with integrity meant doing what was right when people were watching. But it's when no one is watching, when the stakes are high and the rewards tempting, that your true character is revealed. One of the greatest challenges is staying true to yourself when it's uncomfortable. It's easy to justify little lies, to cut corners, or to tell yourself that the ends justify the means. But every time you compromise your values, you chip away at your self-respect. And over time, people notice. They may not see every decision you make, but they feel it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you speak, and in the way you show up. Integrity is something you project without having to say a word. Living with integrity, no matter the cost, also means being willing to own up to your mistakes. I've made plenty of them, and there have been times when I wanted to hide them, to brush them under the rug. But when I've stepped up and admitted where I went wrong, I found that people respected me more, not less. Owning your flaws is not a weakness, it's a strength. It shows that you're human, that you're willing to learn, and that you're not hiding behind a facade of perfection. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "Every guilty person is his own hangman." This resonates deeply with me because it reminds me that when you compromise your integrity, you're the one who suffers most. You live with that guilt, that inner turmoil, knowing that you've betrayed yourself. But when you live with integrity, even in the face of loss or discomfort, you carry yourself with a sense of inner peace and confidence that no one can take away from you. Over time, I've learned that living with integrity isn't just about making the right choices in the big moments. It's about the small, everyday decisions that align with your values. It's about showing up consistently as the person you claim to be, without bending to external pressures or the lure of short-term gains. This kind of integrity builds an unshakable foundation of respect from others, but more importantly, from yourself.